Okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to get rid of study anxiety. Basically, your brain is a bit like a thought factory, and it produces these thoughts sort of like subconsciously. This is my drawing of a factory. And this analogy I sort of took from the Healthy Gamers YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description. But basically, if you sort of feed thoughts, they will repeat. So whatever you sort of choose to focus on, I say choose, but before understanding how this all works, you're not really choosing what you're thinking. But after you understand this, you can sort of choose what you think about. So, for example, if you start to focus on this thought that I'm going to fail. So, for example, I'm going to fail this exam, or one of the examples of the types of mental distortions is catastrophic thinking. And that's, for example, saying, I'm going to fail this exam, and therefore, because I fail this exam, I'm going to get kicked out of university or college. And that's going to mean that I don't land any job. And that's going to lead to me being homeless. And then I'll be single forever and no one will marry me, and then I'll die alone, and then whatever. This sort of chain of events in reality looks more like I'm going to fail an exam. I'm going to feel disappointed. There's going to be negative emotions, yes. But actually, they only last for like 2 seconds. Well, that's for me. They last for 2 seconds for me. Some other people maybe have more of a problem with rumination, which then that can last for, a lot longer depending on how much they ruminate, hours or days. But sometimes we can surprise ourselves, and the failure doesn't end up causing as much negative emotion as we think it will. Now, so how do we change this? So it's sort of similar to cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not a therapist. Actually, I'm not even old enough to be a therapist. So, take what I say with a grain of salt. But basically, this is to change your focus to what thoughts you're letting pass through your mind. So part of this is something called meditation. And meditation is this idea that you are not your thoughts. So you might have this thought come in, oh, I'm going to fail. But you're able to recognize that it's just a thought. And just because you think something doesn't mean that that thing will actually happen. So, for example, something easy to illustrate this would be, oh, I am a chicken nugget. Just because you think this thought, it doesn't make you being a chicken nugget any closer to reality. So just because you think you're going to fail, it doesn't actually have any effect on anything whatsoever. It doesn't increase the probability that it will happen or won't happen. So now these will produce very different feelings. This one produces no feeling, because you're like, I'm actually not a chicken nugget, and I know that for a fact. So it doesn't make me feel anything. This one, on the other hand, can cause anxiety in you because you have repeated this to yourself so many times that it sort of turns into a belief. So another concept is this repetition of thoughts will lead to the formation of beliefs, or the strengthening of beliefs. So this already has some weight to it. This is probably the first time you've ever thought to yourself, I'm a chicken nugget. So it doesn't have any weight to it. Maybe if you thought this like 360,000 times every single day, maybe then you'd, turn insane and you'd start actually thinking like this. But the probability of you actually repeating this thought to yourself 360,000 times each day is, I don't know anyone who's ever done that. But there probably is someone out there. It's the internet. So what we want to do is we want to eventually turn the feelings that we have when this thought is produced into the feelings that we have about this thought, right? Because right now, if I think this thought, I'm going to fail, to me, it doesn't produce any anxiety, because in my head, it's like, that's not very probable, because I haven't thought this very often, Now, here's the other thing, right? Some people might say that, okay, all you're doing is you're dealing with the, the symptoms rather than the root. So, for example, if you're really bad at studying, okay, you don't know how to read a book, then I'm going to fail is like a natural results of you being bad at studying, right? So just changing this thought to I'm going to succeed or something doesn't change the actual reality, right? Which is that you might actually still fail. So what's the point of all this thought changing? Well, this is a video about decreasing your anxiety. Yes, this reality might still happen, but we're thinking now about how does your anxiety impact how you behave, right? So do you think you are more likely or less likely to fail if you feel anxious, right? Now, in the past, I actually would have said that if you increase your anxiety, then you're more likely to take action. Therefore, you're more likely to succeed, right? Now, have a think. Has this actually been what's happening lately? Because really, what might actually be happening is that you feel so anxious, right? So this is true. They've got a curve, and it looks a bit like this. And, there's some optimal level of anxiety to have where you do the most amount of work. And then there's, if you have too much anxiety, then you don't do work, right? That's productivity. So that's the optimal amount. If you have too much anxiety, then you do little amount of work, okay? This tiny amount of work that you do there. And if you have too little anxiety, you also don't do enough work. But to be honest, I don't think anyone has too little anxiety that's watching this video. So we've got this anxiety. This is our tolerance, right? And then the amount of anxiety we actually have is all the way up here. And it's just absolutely crushing our tolerance. Okay? So what does that lead to? It leads to paralysis. So I guess the idea is we want to decrease anxiety. So how do we decrease anxiety? With this sort of thought, if that arises, okay, you remind yourself it's just a thought. And then the next step is to think about how you'll actually be okay if you fail. Okay, so I will be okay if I fail. Okay, so imagine, so you're tasking your brain to do this. You're tasking your brain to imagine a situation where you fail and you're still okay. Okay, so I guess that might look like, oh, okay, I fail this exam. Okay, and then I need to delay my graduation. I take easier courses, and I sort of learn how to study, and I try my best the next time around without the anxiety interfering. And then, life will move on, and I'll, if I have to, I'll change my degree. There's all these steps that you can take that won't mean that you have a terrible life, right? So those are sort of the first steps. This video is very, very messy. I wish you luck in getting rid of your anxiety.